Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 9 articles in this edition for you. This is all political type news that I have, so I thought I'd just roll it into one publication for you this morning. URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of McClatchydc.com, and it says, BuzzFeed sued over its publication of uncorroborated Trump dossier. Of Alexei Jubarev from the Russian website of Severs.com, which is owned by his parent company, XBT Holding Severs website. So there's a picture of him here in this article. If you want to pull it up and take a look at him. It says, a Russian-tied tech firm named in controversial dossier containing uncorroborated allegations about President Donald Trump and the hacking of Democratic National Committee email accounts announced late Friday that it has filed defamation suits against the online news site BuzzFeed, its editor-in-chief, and a former British intelligence agent. Lawsuits were brought by XBT Holding, a Cyprus-based company owned by Russian tech magnate Alexei Jubarev. Lawyer for his firm filed complaints Friday in London against the former spy and his company, and against BuzzFeed and its editor-in-chief, Ben Smith, in Broward County Circuit Court in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where XBT's subsidiary headquartered. The dossier included libelous, unverified, and untrue allegations regarding XBT, Webzilla, and Gubarev. The lawsuits seek yet undetermined compensation for damages suffered by XBT as the result of the publication of the dossier, a statement said. New York-based BuzzFeed Incorporated, which published the dossier in full on January 10th, wasn't alone. Former spy Christopher Steele and his company, Orbis Business Intelligence in London, were named as defendants in the London suit. McClatchy, BuzzFeed spokesman Matt Mittenthal, said Friday night, "We have redacted Mr. Gubarev's name from the published dossier and apologize for including it." Steele, British intelligence agent who conducted opposition research on behalf of Trump's political opponent from both major U.S. parties. The dossier, which was shared privately with reporters, lawmakers, and law enforcement, exploded into the national debate after FBI Director James Comey presented it to President Barack Obama and then President-elect Donald Trump. The document alleged, without corroboration, that the Trump campaign had worked with the Kremlin on penetrating Democratic National Committee computers. The dossier alleges XBT's involvement and names Gubarev, saying he cooperated with Russian spy agencies under duress. "We were shocked to see our good name wrongly included in and published in this unsubstantiated report. We are confident that the courts will review the evidence of our non-involvement and provide fair and reasonable compensation from the perpetrators of this outrageous allegation," the company statement said. The dossier became public. McClatchy interviewed Gubarev, a venture capitalist whose many companies include web hosting services, network solutions, and data storage. He denied any involvement and surmised that a competitor might have sought to embarrass him. The dossier said that XBT and affiliates doing botnets and porn traffic to transmit viruses, plant bugs, steal data, and conduct altering operations against the Democratic Party leadership. The British Orbis Business Intelligence Limited charges that they deliberately claimed that the plaintiffs had hacked into the emails of the Democratic Party and had used such unlawful access to transmit viruses, plant bugs, and steal data and alter files and programs. Gubarev operates at least 40,000 servers across the globe and said he would have received real-time information if there had been hacking or illicit activity tied to his businesses. There is no evidence of that, he said, adding that neither the FBI nor any other U.S. authority has contacted him. The dossier suggested that several Trump campaign aides were aware of the Russian hacking scheme, allegations that Trump dismissed as garbage. The Florida lawsuit says that neither defendant, BuzzFeed or Ben Smith, had contacted the plaintiffs to determine whether the allegations had any basis in fact, nor have they since, it alleges. Moreover, the suit claims that even as BuzzFeed and Smith published the information, which they acknowledged at the time contained unverified information, they knew without a doubt that at least certain portions of the dossier were untrue. BuzzFeed story, which said the dossier is not unconfirmed, it includes some clear errors. The suit says the story has been viewed more than 5.9 million times. It also says that Gubarov, who is married with 3 young children, is not a public figure, has found his personal and professional reputation in tatters. His wife has been harassed online, and his family's security has been compromised. Steele, a well-regarded former British spy with strong knowledge of Russia, reportedly went into hiding after the dossier's contents became public. Investigators and the global media have since pursued details in the dossier, which included salacious allegations involving Trump's activities in Russia that the dossier suggested had been recorded by Russian authorities. According to the mystery surrounding the document, some European reports suggest that the possible source of information in the dossier, Oleg Erovikin, not sure how to pronounce it, former top officer of the Soviet KGB and its Russian successor, the FSB, was mysteriously found dead in his car in Moscow on December the 26th. McClatchy reported late last month that the FBI and 5 other law enforcement and intelligence agencies have collaborated for months in an investigation into Russian attempts to influence the November elections. That collective probe includes whether money from the Kremlin covertly aided Trump, 2 people familiar with the matter said. The agencies involved in the inquiry are the FBI, the CIA, the National Security Agency. My phone has decided that it's going to bother me. So let me shut that down. All right. Sorry about that. It doesn't go off this early in the morning. Let's see. The agencies involved in the inquiry are the FBI, CIA, the National Security Agency, the Justice Department, the Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and representatives of the Director of National Intelligence, the sources said. Among the items being looked at, familiar with the probe, is how money may have moved from the Kremlin to help Trump win the election. At least 9 news organizations, including McClatchy, possessed copies of the dossier, electing not to publish its contents until the reporters could check the validity of its allegations. But on January the 10th, CNN disclosed that the U.S. intelligence officials had informed Trump of the dossier when they briefed him on the findings of the U.S. intelligence community report that concluded Russian President Vladimir Putin had ordered the hacks in an effort to keep Trump's campaign, again, to help Trump's campaign. A short time later, BuzzFeed posted the entire 35-page document, redacting the name of one individual and saying it did not know whether the statement attributed to Steele's intelligence sources were accurate. At a news conference the next day, Trump suggested that U.S. officials might have released the dossier and thanked news organizations that had not published it. He assailed CNN and called BuzzFeed a failing pile of garbage. I think they're going to suffer the consequences, he said. Also drew criticism from some media figures. Washington Post columnist Margaret Sullivan wrote, "It's a bad idea, and always has been, to publish unverified smears." BuzzFeed editor Smith defended the publication in a column, saying CNN's news story on the document made it too newsworthy publish. That halfway position ran contrary to how we think of our compact with our alliance, with our audience. You trust us to give you the full story. We trust you to reckon with a messy, sometimes uncertain reality, he wrote. So there is that sticky little situation in it. Here's off the dailycaller.com, and it says, House Intelligence Foreign Affairs Committee members compromised by rogue IT staff. Managed Office Information Technology for members of the House Committee on Intelligence and other lawmakers were abruptly relieved of their duties and that they accessed computers without permission. Brothers Abid, Imran, and Jamal Awan were barred from computer networks at the House of Representatives Thursday, the Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group has learned. Of the intelligence panel and 5 members of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs were among the dozens of members who employed the suspects on a shared basis. The 2 committees deal with many of the nation's most sensitive issues and documents, including those related to the war on terrorism. Also among those whose computer systems may have been compromised is Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was previously the target of a disastrous email hack when she served as chairman of the Democratic National Committee during the 2016 campaign. Suspected of serious violations, including accessing members' computer networks without their knowledge and stealing equipment from Congress. IT for Representative Joaquin Castro, a Texas Democrat who serves on both the Intelligence and Foreign Affairs panels. As of his employment with our office has been terminated, Castro spokeswoman Erin Hatch told the DCNF on Friday. Who worked for Louisiana Democrat Representative Cedric Richmond, who is on the Committee of Homeland Security. Imran worked for Representatives Andre Carson and Indiana Democrat Jackie Speier, a California Democrat, both the Intelligence Committee, and their spokesman did not respond to DCNF's request for comment. Imran also worked for the House Office of Wasserman Schultz. Representative Tammy Duckworth, an Illinois Democrat, employed a bid for IT work in 2016. She was a member of the House committees dealing with armed services oversight and Benghazi, to the Senate in November of 2016. Abid has a prior criminal record and a bankruptcy. Abid also worked for Representative Lois Frankel, a Florida Democrat who's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. The 3 men, meaning they are hired by multiple offices which split their salaries and use them as needed for IT service. It's up to each member to fire them. A criminal investigation into 5 unnamed people began late last year related to serious and potentially illegal violations of House IT policies, Politico reported Thursday. Chiefs of staff for the members were briefed Thursday by the Sergeant at Arms. Police spokeswoman Eva Maliski said the investigation was still ongoing and arrests have not been made, but staff were asked to update their security settings. BuzzFeed reported that the Sergeant at Arms told staff that the subjects were 4 men who were brothers and 1 woman. It did not name them. Of the affected members as saying that it was some sort of procurement scam, but now I'm concerned that they may have stolen data from us, emails, who knows. Jamal did not return requests for comment from the DCNF at a personal email address, while emails to house addresses in the 3 men's names bounced back on Friday. Abid, Aman, and Jamal have all shared a house in Lorton, Virginia that is owned by Alvey. Alvey is a female House IT employee who works for many of the same members as the 3 brothers, as well as the House Democrat caucus. of trouble have long been visible in public records. The Congressional Credit Union repossessed a bid's car in 2009, and he declared bankruptcy in 2012, facing multiple lawsuits. Albee, who did not respond to the DCNF's request for comment, has taken multiple second mortgages, who public records suggest only 22 years old and first began working in the house when he was 20, was paid nearly $160,000 a year, or 3 times the average house IT staff salary, according to Inside Gov, which tracks congressional salaries. A bid was paid $161,000, and Amran was paid $165,000. A spokesman for the Intelligence Committee said the committee office has its own IT staff and security measures, and classified information from the panel is not allowed to be sent to members' personal offices. So there is that one. The next one we have here is off of theguardian.com, and it says U.S. White House requests to reinstate the travel ban. The U.S. Appeals Court has denied the Justice Department's request for an immediate reinstatement of Donald Trump's controversial travel ban. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco made the ruling early on Sunday morning and asked those challenging the ban to respond to the appeal filed by the Trump administration late on Saturday night, and the Justice Department to file counter response by Monday afternoon. Request for an immediate administrative stay pending full consideration of the emergency motion for a stay pending appeal is denied, the ruling said. The Justice Department had earlier filed an appeal against a judge's order lifting the ban. The new administration's flagship immigration policy threatened to unravel after 1 week. The higher court's denial of an immediate stay means legal battles over the ban will continue into the coming East. After the appeal was lodged on Saturday, Trump told reporters at his private Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida, "We'll win. For the safety of the country, we'll win." The president's comments followed a personal attack on the U.S. District Judge James Robard, whose court ruling in Seattle on Friday questioned the continuity of Trump's order banning people from 7 mainly Muslim countries from entering the U.S. But the Justice Department filing said Robard's ruling posed an immediate harm to the public, thwarted enforcement of an executive order, and second-guessed the president's national security judgment about the quantum of risk by the admission of certain classes of non-citizens and the best means of minimizing that risk. Also criticized Robard's legal reasoning, saying it violated the separation of powers and stepped on the president's authority as commander-in-chief. The appeal said the state of Washington lacked standing to challenge the order and said Congress gave the president the authority to suspend the admission of any class of visitor. Earlier on Saturday, Trump criticized Robard on Twitter, writing, "The opinion of this so-called judge, which essentially takes law enforcement away from our country, is ridiculous and will be overturned. Has said extreme vetting of refugees and immigrants is needed to prevent terror attacks." Continued to criticize the decision in tweets throughout Saturday. "The judge opens up our country to potential terrorists and others that do not have our best interests at heart. Bad people are very happy," he tweeted. The Justice Department's appeal promises to create a showdown between our new administration and the judiciary over a policy Trump consistently promised to deliver while on the campaign trail. But the ban's implementation has also placed under close scrutiny the role of the authors of the executive order, Trump's strategist Steve Bannon and aide Stephen Miller, as the administration tries to assert its authority on the Washington bureaucracy. After a week of chaos at airports across the U.S., the Department of Homeland Security said on Saturday it would return to its normal procedures for screening travelers as it lifted the restrictions following the court ruling. Refugees and advocacy groups, including the American Civil Liberties Union and the International Refugee Assistance Project, issued a joint statement on Saturday urging those with now valid visas to consider rebooking travel to the United States immediately because the ruling could be overturned or put on hold. A U.S. State Department email seen by Rutgers said the department was working to begin admitting refugees, including Syrians, as soon as Monday. The travel ban sparked protests across the U.S. and the world at the weekend. There were demonstrations in New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, as well as in other cities, and also outside Trump's Florida resort on Saturday night, where he was attending a ball with his wife, Melania. There were also protests in London, Paris, Berlin, Jakarta, Manila, Hong Kong, Sydney, and Melbourne. Trump's attack on Robard was also brought an angry response from Democrats. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader in the House, said, "No matter how many times the president attacks this judge, it won't change the fact that this ban is unconstitutional, immoral, and dangerous." Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont said in a statement on Saturday that Trump's hostility toward the rule of law is not just embarrassing, it is dangerous. He seems intent on precipitating a constitutional crisis. Criticizing the judge's decision could make it tougher for the Justice Department attorneys as they seek to defend the executive order in Washington state and other courts, said John, a law professor at George Washington University. Presidents were unusually circumspect about commenting on government litigation. It's hard for the president to demand that courts respect his inherent authority when he is disrespecting the inherent authority of the judiciary. That certainty tends to poison the well for litigation, Turley said. It is unusual for a president to attack a member of the judiciary, which the U.S. Constitution designates as a check to the power of the executive branch and Congress. Reached by email on Saturday, Robard declined to comment on Trump's tweets. In an interview with ABC scheduled to air on Sunday, the Vice President Mike Pence said he did not think Trump's criticism of the judge undermined the separation of powers. "I think the American people are very accustomed to this president speaking his mind and speaking very straight with them," Pence said. The court ruling was the first move in what could be months of legal challenges to Trump's clampdown on immigration. The sudden reversal of the ban catapulted back to airports with uncertainty over how long the window to enter the U.S. will remain open. Among those rushing to reach the U.S., Fawad Sharif and his family from Erbil, Iraq, prepared to fly on Saturday to Istanbul and then to New York before starting a new life in Nashville, Tennessee. "I'm very happy that we are going to travel today. Finally, we made it," said Sharif, who was stopped from boarding a New York-bound flight last week. The next article I have for you is off of EUTimes.net. Get it to scroll up here. Says, Russia to start massive deportations of immigrants if the new bill passes. In accordance with the draft of the bill of the Ministry for Interior Affairs, migrants from the countries of the Eurasian Economic Union will be fined and expelled from Russia for the absence of the employment contract. For the time being, migrant workers from the EEU countries, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Belarus, are exempt from the obligation to obtain work permits in member states of the Union. The period of a stay of a migrant in a state of employment is determined by validity of the employment contract. However, responsibility for its absence is envisaged only in the area of employment rather than immigration legislation. According to the draft law of the Interior Ministry, a foreigner who does not require a patent or work permit shall not be entitled to work in Russia without employment contracts. A penalty is to be set on the level of up to 5,000 rubles, including administrative deportation from the Russian Federation. The bill also prohibits employment for foreigners and stateless individuals in case the migration card does not indicate work as the purpose of entry, the Izvestia reports. An exception will be made for citizens of Belarus who are exempt from obtaining a migration card. According to police, more than 15 million foreign citizens entered Russia in 2016. About 70% of migrants are representatives of the former Soviet republics. That's 11.5% arrived from EU countries, it says. The next article that I have for you is off of zerohedge.com. It says, "Dear leftists, you need to take a closer look at the real refugees before you denounce vetting." Plenty of mainstream media outlets have been critical of the Trump executive orders regarding immigration and vetting of refugees. There are too many to list, but I'll use an excerpt from a U.S. news article to drive the general point home. When the United States accepts refugees from countries with a significant Muslim population, we undermine the anti-American hatred that underlies Islamic State group recruitment. Closing America's door to Syrian refugees, therefore, is not only a heartless hiccup in our nation's history, it also validates Islamic State group propaganda, advocates the group's agenda, and drives refugees back into the arms of dangerous terrorists. By turning away Syrian refugees, Trump is plunging America into a national security nightmare. The fact-check website Snopes, which has previously been outed as being heavily liberal biased, being run by a failed liberal blogger, also gets in on the act, saying that Syrian kids aren't holding guns, instead labeling them as Pakistani. The above displayed photograph in this article, if you want to pull it up and take a look at it, however, was not taken in Syria and does not show refugees. The claim that the children are orphans is also baseless, as well as the claim that the children are holding real guns. The photograph was taken in July of 2014 on Al-Qaeda's Jerusalem Day in Pakistan. The description accompanying the photo on Alame states that the children are Pakistani Shiite Muslims and holding toy guns during a protest. If there is one thing Snopes is correct about, it is that Pakistani refugees also need to be intensely vetted and should be on the list of countries, possibly above others Trump listed. However, Snopes is mostly doing this to dispute the notion that refugees could be dangerous, which, given the information that is out there, is at best outright malicious at worst. And there's some video in this if you want to take a look at that. It says, "Without question, they would just strike you as cute children who deserve a country of their own if you look away with the guns and put them in a TV promo looking for donations." The Express makes it appear as though these are just hopeless children who are playing with toy guns, and that the Western nations denying refugees entry into our nations are just awful. Just how easy it would be for one of these young children posing with a real gun and real ISIS training to slip in with the kids who deserve a place. I can already feel the next quote coming. "Those kids in Express's slideshow were playing with toy guns, and even if the kids in the above video have real guns, they have no real training and would never shoot anyone." Well, when I said the MSM and the many immigration protesters were either willfully ignorant or outright malicious, I really meant it. The video below is so graphic that I was hesitant to post it, but there is not a safe space, and if you are looking for one, you're in the wrong place. I will, however, provide one last warning. If you are squeamish, easily disturbed, or just plain scared of the truth, do not watch this video because it is extremely graphic. A description is provided below the video if you cannot watch it. And it says, "For those who did not watch, the video showed armed ISIS-trained children clearing a house methodically and professionally, just like a team of commandos, and executing ISIS detainees within the house." Bunker 530 originally posted the video, and their commentary is this. "Take a good look at the world today. We have children in the streets of the United States throwing a temper tantrum because they believe that the politicians have failed. Maybe they have. Maybe they have failed them by allowing them to believe that they live in a world of sunshine and rainbows. Politics completely aside, this video is a snapback to reality. This is the real world that we live in today as a species. Grown men are training children, some as young as 6, to move through a house in a tactical fashion with live ammunition, having them kill actual living human beings. To put cake, they are recording it with some serious production value and then uploading it to the internet to show the world that their children are ready to die for their cause. I don't see you marching for women's and children's rights in Syria. While you whine and complain about social issues that are a moot point in our society, women and children are being raped and murdered around the world by maniacs. Take a look outside of your own safe space and realize that the world can't be the utopian place you want. It isn't possible. It is never going to happen, and this is why. If you think this is all just a big production, you clearly have not watched the video. Children are actually delivering kill shots on real live people. This is not the Matrix. This is the real world, and it will never cease to shock and disturb you. So think long and hard next time you see that cute refugee kid in the video and ask yourself, is it possible that this child is actually a trained killer? Whether it's man, woman, or child, is there any real way to know if someone's coming from a war zone is just an innocent or seriously dangerous individual? For the record, I'm not certain if Trump has all the answers to the refugee question and whether or not his immigration actions will actually be effective or not. That these actions are likely harming some innocent individuals who truly mean no harm. Certainly, he can't just wave a magic wand and make this country's immigration problems go away overnight, especially given how difficult it is to know exactly who's trying to enter into and immigrate to the USA on a daily basis. However, clearly aware that the world is a bad place and is trying to do something to protect and safeguard this country from a very cruel world that very much means to do our citizens harm. At least he's not sticking his head in the sand and being naive or willfully ignorant about the truth, like our mainstream media outlets are doing every day when they denounce him just for trying something his predecessor didn't. If the protesters took the mainstream media blinders off and saw the world for what it really is, so opposed to Trump's actions. The next article I have for you is off of the allnewspipeline.com, and it says, college snowflakes want more violence against Trump and his supporters as professor tells parents whorehouses and mental wards would be much cheaper. While the protest at UC Berkeley turning into a violent riot prevent Milo Yiannopoulos' speech has spurred a much-needed public awareness about the First Amendment right of free speech being stifled on college campuses, as well as the question of whether colleges such as Berkeley that not only allow this type of violence to prevail and cause the cancellation of an invited speaker, but had staff members allegedly participating in the violence. Receive any federal funding, it has also exposed student groups that are now encouraging more violent protests like Berkeley. Starting with Barnard Columbia Socialist Group, which reportedly held an open discussion forum which included students questioning whether previous activism against Trump and his boosters, including anti-feminist provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos, had been violent enough. Via the College Fix says, several students chuckled when another said that aiming fireworks at campus buildings was effective, apparently referring to Yiannopoulos' scheduled Wednesday appearance at the University of California, Berkeley, that administration canceled the event in the face of widespread violence and property destruction by alleged non-student protesters who set off the fireworks, threw bricks, and even pepper sprayed a Trump supporter. While this is just one in a long list of examples, it does highlight the debate of whether colleges that allow not only liberal snowflake activists to violently protest not agree with should have their federal funding cut, as President Trump recently suggested, but whether parents of those attending these colleges should be spending tens of thousands of dollars for tuition to a college that is allowing their children to be endangered by this type of violent behavior. Below is a segment of Judge Jean Piero's street justice. She visited a college campus asking if the violence seen on television screens across the nation at the UC Berkeley was acceptable, and the response was to be verbally attacked by a woman screaming about Nazis and white supremacists, claiming that free speech doesn't apply to them, stating right-wing people do not have the right to spew hatred and bigotry. When Judge Janine attempted to have a civil conversation with the little snowflake, the girl became completely unhinged, screaming, F Trump, F these white people that think that they get to say, and before she was interrupted by another woman talking about tolerance. By the 154-minute mark, Judge Janine had enough and looked right into the camera and spoke to parents that are paying tuition, saying, you know what? If this is what our colleges are doing, don't pay tuition anymore. Especially noteworthy is the portion when the unhinged snowflake is asked if she understands what free speech means, which her answer makes it clear she doesn't, which should also show parents across the nation that their higher education institutions are not even teaching students the basics about the U.S. Constitution anymore. Whorehouses and mental wards would be much cheaper. The good Judge Pirro is not the only one highlighting that paying the extreme high college tuition is a complete waste of money for parents, as a conservative professor harassed for daring to point out in 2016 that a Catholic school should not be promoting a humanistic view of the world above a godly one, has the same message for parents in his book, Out of the Ashes, Rebuilding American Culture, where he states the following. Debauchery, perversion, contempt for your supposedly benighted ancestors, lazy antagonism, easy and costless pacifism, political maneuvering, and an enforcement of new orthodoxy that in denying rational analysis seeks to render itself immune to criticism. You sink yourself in debt to discover that your sons and daughters have been severed from their faith, their morals, and their reason. Whorehouses and mental wards would be much cheaper. They might well be healthier too. He's right. Many of these examples, like the girl above, show symptoms of possible mental illness, but the points made by both the professor and Judge Janine are worth following up on, with President Trump questioning whether federal funds should be allocated to colleges that allow free speech censorship, and alumni donors are reacting badly to what they see playing out across the nation's colleges. If parents want to see higher education, get back to the basics of actually educating instead of creating safe spaces and allowing the incitement of violence, as well as allowing the violence to go unaddressed with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. They are going to have to speak with their wallets as well. In August of 2016, the New York Times reported that donors were down, and it was directly due to the spectacle of what has been seen publicly across the nation's campuses. Alumni from a range of generations say they are baffled by today's college culture. Among their laments, students are too wrapped up in racial and identity politics. They are allowed to take too many frivolous courses. They have repudiated the heroes and traditions of the past by judging them by today's standards rather than in the context of their times. Fraternities are being unfairly maligned, and men are being demonized by sexual assault investigations. And university administrations have been too meek in addressing protesters whose messages have seemed to fly in the face of free speech. They list example after example, including the one shown below, which encapsulates the issues at universities in this day and age. It says Scott C. Johnston, who graduated from Yale in 1982, said he was on campus last fall when activists tried to shut down a free speech conference because apparently they missed irony class that day. He recalled the Yale student who was videotaped screaming at a professor, Nicholas, that he had failed to create a place of comfort and home for students in his capacity as the head of residential college. I don't think anything has damaged Yale's band quite like that, said Mr. Johnston, a founder of an internet startup and former hedge fund manager. This is not your daddy's liberalism. The worst part, he continues, is that campus administrators are wilting before the activists like flowers. Yale's College Alumni Fund was flat between this year and last, according to Karen Pert, a university spokeswoman. In a short AP video shown below, even some Berkeley students are upset over the violence of the recent protest, with one pointing out that it is money from the school tuition that have to repair the damages caused by the riots. Bottom line, colleges and universities need money to operate, and the donors shrinking their checks is a good start. But federal funding for schools like Berkeley must be cut off, and most important of all, parents must be made to understand that many of these so-called schools their children are learning are to hide from reality, that violence and throwing temper tantrums are being encouraged, that free speech is being censored, that activism is taking the place of education, and most importantly, that every single time a peaceful protest turns into a riot, their children are being endangered. The next one I have for you is off of alarabi.co.uk, and it says, Riyadh military base targeted by Houthi rebel missile strike. Yemeni rebels reported the successful test launch of a precision Scud missile on Sunday night, which was allegedly aimed at a Saudi military camp 40 kilometers west of Riyadh. Saudi officials denied that the missile hit the military camp near the Al-Mazaramiya, I'm guessing, I don't know how to pronounce all this stuff, and it has not been possible to independently verify this fact. No local residents have reported hearing an explosion on social media. The Houthi rebels announced the successful launch of a Scud-type ballistic missile at around 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Saba news agency quoted a Houthi spokesperson announcing the attack as a successful test fire of a precision long-distance ballistic missile. We stress that the capital of Saudi Arabia is now in the range of our missiles, and God willing, what is coming will be a statement from the Houthi government said. The Saudi Minister of Defense, Mohammed bin Salman, was at the meeting with Yemeni President Hadi at the time of the attack. This is the second alleged Houthi Scud missile attack on Saudi soil in 1 week, and the latest attack since Yemen started stockpiling missiles in the summer of 2016. On January 31st, a Borkan 1 missile reportedly killed 80 coalition soldiers on a Saudi UAE military base on Zakwar Island and in the Red Sea. This attack was never confirmed or denied by the Saudi-led coalition. International indignation erupted in November last year after a Houthi ballistic missile was shot down nearby the holy city of Mecca. A video released on YouTube on Sunday night appears to show a large underground stockpile of Houthi missiles on lorries. The next article I have is off of BizPack Review. It says, heroin bags with Trump's face, Florida Attorney General Bondi. Big mistake. I'm going to make sure he gets one. There is a new name for heroin on the streets of Florida, Donald Trump. In a January bust that followed a 6-month investigation into drug dealing in Hernando County, the sheriff's office confiscated the drugs and discovered that some of the packages were covered by the face of America's 45th president, WFLA reported. Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi delivered a stern warning to the pushers on Friday as it pertains to President Trump, who has been open about the fact that he has never partaken in narcotics or alcohol. To this drug dealer is big mistake putting the president's picture on this, Bondi told reporters. A big mistake, because he's going to be our most fierce advocate in taking this junk off our streets. Can you believe this? Big mistake. I'm going to make sure Trump gets one of these packages when the case is all over to put in the Oval Office to remind him of all the good he's doing, she said. The bust, which officials said was the largest in county history, netted 5,500 bags of heroin. Authorities apprehended 46-year-old Kelvin Scott Johnson and charged him with heroin trafficking, cocaine possession, and driving with a suspended license. And if you want to view that one. And the final one I have in this episode, this is off of Gizmodo.com, and it says, Alibaba CEO warns that if trade stops, war starts. CEO of Alibaba and the second richest man in China visited Australia on Saturday. He had a dire warning for Trump and anti-globalization ideas about trade. Ma was in Melbourne to celebrate the opening of the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba's Australia, New Zealand headquarters. At the event, Ma said everybody is concerned about trade wars. If trade stops, war starts. Trump has been vocal about dismantling the United States trade policies and focusing on America First nationalism. One of his first actions as president was to withdraw the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that Obama had spent years negotiating. Ma's remarks weren't simply a warning about potential trade war. He also waxed philosophical about the value of trade. According to Business Insider Australia, the CEO insisted trade is about trade of values, trade of culture, he added. We have to actively prove that trade helps people to communicate. He was criticized by both Democrats and Republicans during the campaign season. With proper planning and coalition building, the Trump administration could feasibly work out an alternative that works for both sides of the aisle. But that would require diplomacy, concessions, and thoughtful strategy, qualities that Trump team has treated with disdain. Alibaba's CEO spoke with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull on Friday and says they had a wonderful discussion about Insider characterized as a regional e-hub, a trade zone that would allow for free online commerce with less border bureaucracy to deal with. Contrast that with Trump's phone call with Turnbull this week, which he characterized as the worst call by far, and ended by hanging up on the Australian Prime Minister. The ignorance on the part of the administration was hammered home when the White House press secretary Sean Spicer repeatedly mispronounced Turnbull's name as Trumbull. Trump met with Alibaba's CEO back in January. Trump was happy to crow that Ma had promised to bring jobs to the United States. Critics predict that Ma won't follow through on the pledge, and that like Trump, he knows a good PR opportunity when he sees it. If the new president doesn't want a nightmare situation, or electronics and other imported goods skyrocket in price, he's going to have to move beyond sound bites and photo ops to dig into endlessly complicated world of policy. Trade wars also have a way of turning into shooting wars, and so far Trump seems fine with that. So that's all I have for you in this episode. There'll be more to follow. I've got another stack of here. So if you like what I'm doing, give it a thumbs up. Let me know. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news, and subscribe if you haven't done that yet, and that way you'll stay informed.